Hey, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. Today, we have a judge amongst us. Leonia Lloyd from Detroit, Michigan is a teacher, then she was a lawyer, and then a judge. And then there's also another small thing about her that I need to mention here, that her twin sister was also a judge. And that both the sisters were judges at a point in time, and she has recently written a book, Your Honor, that we're going to talk about as well. So let's jump in. Welcome, Leonia, and then we'll go from there. Welcome, Leonia.
Hi, how are you? Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about your life. Where did you begin? And teacher to lawyer to judge, how did all that come about?
Well, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, a product of the Detroit school system. And I didn't come in the world alone. I came in with my sister, unannounced, unknown, but she was born upside down, and she came out first. And then as I grew up with my twin sister, we were so close. We had some of the same, things that we liked to do together. And that's how we became teachers. We both became teachers. We liked the same type of thing. We majored in the same thing, but we taught at two different high schools. The teaching was great, but both of us wanted to be lawyers. A lot of things influenced us going through the civil rights period. And we would sit there, we'd be watching TV, talking to each other. And I said, I want to be a lawyer. I want to help people. Leona said, so do I. And, we got motivated like that. And our goal was once we finished teaching, we were going to go into law. And so after 4 years of teaching, paying off the debt of a new car, we went into law school, and we went together. And I'm so glad she hung with me, because she was going to go to UCLA. And I said, no, please stay. And we went to law school together. We then formed a practice when we graduated, Lloyd, and we did that for 10 years. And then I told her I wanted to help more people. Both of us had this thing. We wanted to help people. We wanted to use whatever we were doing to help people, be it teachers. We wanted to help kids. We wanted them not to necessarily go through what we went through, the discrimination we faced as a child. How do they get stronger? So it was always to help people. And I wanted to do it on a bigger scale, and that was to be a judge. And she saw I was very serious about it. She became my campaign manager. And I went up against 10 incumbents. A lot of people said, you're crazy. And they said, you can't win against one, let alone 10. What are you doing? And but I believed in myself. And to me, that's very important. I had that instilled in me as a child. That it was something I set my mind to and planned on doing. Doesn't mean you're not going to get bumps in the road. It doesn't mean you're not going to get, hills to climb. But I believed in myself, and I had her. She believed in me, and I was right. I did unseat a judge and sat down. Then I convinced her. I said, I need someone that thinks like me on the bench with me. I need a partner. And she said, I feel like I've run already, because she campaigned for me. And 2 years later, she ran and she won. And we were known as the Twins for Justice. And we were very creative. She watched me on the bench. She said one day, she said, Leonia, people come in your courtroom one way. She said, but when they leave a different way. She said, it's like they're going into the empowerment zone. She said, you empower these people. And I said, but that's what I should do. That's what the law should do as well. Not just be a punitive tool. I'm not saying that it can't be, and it isn't when it's appropriate. But there's also another way you can use the law. And that's what I was doing. And I call it restorative justice. It's helping restore people. So when she got on the bench and I helped train her, she did the same thing in her way, but she did the same thing. I remember her telling me about a kid who had messed up this old lady's fence and painted all over it and all this. And when he came in, it's not just giving the boy a fine. You destroyed property. You know, there's a lot of respect this lady had keeping that white fence white. And you went and messed it up. And when Leona finished with him, she made him go repaint that fence, you know, restore it back to what it was. Understand, he got to know that little lady living in that house.
Mm-hmm.
He apologized and he said, anytime she needs me, I will go. It's changing what people are before they come in there. I call it transformative justice. And we were doing that. And then when she died suddenly in 2001, that changed everything for me. I had to reinvent who I was because we had been together for over 50 years. And, you know, now all of a sudden I was alone. I was alone. And yeah, I was doing a judgeship before she came, but we were a team. And so after 3 months of going through grief counseling and all the counseling that I went through, I went back and I said, well, God's going to give me the answer what my path is now, because I really don't know. I don't know. And if anybody's ever felt lost, you know, and you just don't know which way you're going, particularly someone who's really knows where they're going all the time. And now this was the first time I was truly lost. Within about 2 months after I came back, I was asked to preside over a drug treatment court. And Leona and I had talked about it. We wanted to do that before. And I said, I'm going to do it. And so I did. That was my answer, because that was the first time, even though I had done restorative justice in my regular courtroom, and even though I had all these GED certificates from folks, letters admitting them into college, I had them changing their lives. They were on a path, okay? These were people who had given up. These were people who had been addicted so long that they figured they've tried before, it never worked for them. This is just the way their life's going to be. I had people who just decided that maybe death is better, that, you know, this world that they were in is not one they want to stay in. And when you're faced with people that are so downtrodden by life, you've got folks who are using prostitution so they can keep their drugs supply. And that is, you know, it demoralizes them, yes. But do you want to be dope sick? Do you want to go through that? The answer is no, they didn't want to go through that. And if they had to pick which one, then when they get high, they're not going to be too worried about, you know, what it looks like and all of that. But I decided to do that program. I decided to help those people. After all, that's what I wanted to do when I got on the bench, was to help people. And this was definitely something that was a plan that I didn't figure on, but I opened myself up to it. And when I got approached by the sheriff, he said, would you help me with ladies who are getting prostitution tickets? I then decided, I'm going to help you. I'm going to open up a special track for them. And I did that. And I got a chance to work with people on every time they came in there for 2 years. And my job was to try to help them see the greatness they had inside of them, that they might can't see it. And my sister, before she died, she told a lady who had been out there prostituting, she's on drugs, etc. And she said, do you know how beautiful you are? And the lady looked at my sister and she looked around in the courtroom and she said, are you talking to me? And Leona said, yes. And even her court reporter told this story at her funeral. She said, the court reporter said, she looked at my sister and said, who is the judge talking to? And my sister said, because I see what you can be. She said, that's what I'm looking at. And the lady started to cry. And then she looked back at this guy. There's always a guy bringing him in. And so she said, Judge, no one ever told me that before. No one ever told me I was beautiful. And she said, I want your program. And so she said, well, then you have a seat. I'm calling the probation officer is in here. They're going to get you signed up. He said, if you really want this, I can help you help you. She said, but you gotta really do this. And the lady said, I will. She told him, she looked in the bag, she said, you can leave. I'm staying. The bottom line, when my sister told me that story, and I smiled, and about a month later, she died. And so when I got approached about a prostitution program, which was on a much larger scale than a one-on-one, which is that she had done, I said, absolutely. Another judge was doing it with me, and she said, wait a minute, Judge Lloyd, wait, we need to think about this. I said, I don't need to think about it. I said, yes, I'm in 100%. So that meant she had to be in 100%. And the first day she had ladies come in and they take them off the street, she came to me and she said, Leonia, they scared me. She said, they scared me. And I said, well, they can't do anything to you. She said, this is really rough. And then I started laughing. The bottom line is that was one of the most rewarding things I'd ever done. And I still, when I got on Facebook, when I retired, they found me. They found me and they said, friend me, and I did. And they started telling me how they were still clean, what they were doing, how they were doing. And when one of them said, if I send you a ticket, he said, I'm getting my master's degree. He said, will you come?
Wow.
I said, of course I will. Of course I will. When she left me, she had just gotten a certification. It's like a state certification to help, take care of people. Then she went on to become a practical nurse. And then she went on to get a bachelor's degree to be a counselor to help addicted people. And she came back 8 years later with a stream of people sitting at a graduate. I gave graduation. So she sat at a graduation. She looked and they had each one get up and tell the new graduates, this is what you can do when you leave her. You did well under her, but the test comes when you walk out that door from Judge Lloyd. Now there's no judge. You are the judge. You are the drug counselor. There's no more screens. There's no more screens. She's screening you 3 times a week. There's no more screens. And they said, and they got up and each one of them said what they had done. And I had not seen these people in a long time, but this guy brought them all in and they all stood one by one and they said their graduation year. And I smiled. And she was one of those who contacted me on Facebook, and I went to see her get her master's degree. The bottom line is that anybody can change. Anybody can transform. It's give them the tools, give them the things that they need. And that's what reformative justice is about. Now, sometimes people, they say lock people up. You must understand, if all you do is lock people up and they come out, the stats show if it's drug cases and things like that, they will reoffend within the first 30 days. Okay, we kept stats on our graduates 3 to 5 years out, had not reoffended. So the bottom line is I knew drug courts worked. And but my veterans were saying, they would test positive and they would say, but I'm not like them. They would point to the other people in drug court. And I said, well, you're using the same kind of drugs. What you mean you're not like them? And they said, I'm not like them. And when I heard Judge Russell, he's a judge in Buffalo, New York, at a conference say the same exact thing. He was told the same thing by his guys. He started a veterans court. Well, after I listened, I said, I'm starting one. I'm a real good starter. I start stuff, So I said, I'm starting one. And I went back and asked my chief judge, and she said, no. He said, we've got 2 specialty courts with you, and that's it right now. And I said, but we need this. I can cut through red tape. I can have the VA. I can get them into programs. I can get them to see doctors right away. They don't have to wait. They wait so long, they stop even trying. I said, and they go get alcohol and stuff. And so he said, no. The next year I went and I talked to the man who had started these programs. The Congress by this time had really acknowledged him. And he said, I'll fly to Detroit. I'll talk to her. He said, if you need me to. I said, fine. So I came back all geared up. I don't take no easily. Okay. And that's another thing people should understand. If you're going for something, you can't just let a no stop you dead in your tracks. Mm-hmm. And I was prepared. I was prepared to really go to gusto. And I told her, I said, look, I said, Judge Russell's willing to come down here and speak to you. And she said, stop, Judge Lloyd. And I looked at her and she said, you got your program. She said, if it means this much to you, the second time you've been down here, she said, then you've got it. The one thing I can say about that is that vets that graduated that program spun off and started their own programs to catch people who didn't come to court, but they were lost, veterans that were lost. They learned how to give services out there like they saw in Veterans Court. I'm so proud of them. I don't know what to do. I see them I'm also on a board now to help homeless vets. So I see them when they're trying to help homeless vets. They have their table set up, et cetera, and they holler, Judge Lloyd. I said, hey, and I go over and take pictures with them. I'm just so proud of them because they took what was given to them and they're giving it freely to other people, and they're helping people transform. They're helping them become their better life, the life that they really are supposed to lead. So that's a little bit about me.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. I've always thought that doctors and judges, right, for that matter, are pretty similar. In terms of they have the creative powers, and a lot of people look up to doctors as next to God, and I think the same goes for judges. It's not about looking at what did the person do and punishing them. It's about reforming them, and I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I went to a couple of countries. I've been to Thailand and Korea, and I've had people come in from Japan to watch our court, right? And so the two guys that came in from Japan, they came up to me afterwards. They watched me in court. They watched me shake the hands of defendants that were graduating. They watched me give a hug to the defendants because they had done such a great job and they were about to leave the program. And they said to me, they said, oh, Judge Lloyd, in our country, oh no, you can't touch the judge. And I said, what do you mean you can't? She said, they said, you shook hand. Oh no, you can, no, 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 no. They said they hardly even look at the judge. And I said, well, that doesn't work for me. And and they said, we like what you're doing. We like what you're doing. And but that's different customs, and but they came to see, but they saw it was a difference in how people progress and go through the problems they have with drugs and get off drugs, but they recreate a new life. And it's not just getting off drugs, it's getting retrained in jobs and occupations and transitional housing and permanent housing, things of that nature. Before you leave me, you're going to have everything laid out. We get the blueprint, do a blueprint, get it done. But when you go to other countries, it is different. When I went to Korea, I was there with a council, a city council group, and they were from Southfield. And they said, you're a judge? I said, yes. And then they said, oh, and they started bowing and stuff. And I said, you don't have to do all that. You don't have to do all that. They said, here, the judge, they told me how judges are looked upon and revered. And I said, well, that's nice. And they said, but as I talked to the guy who was our guide for 4 days, and he saw what kind of judge I was, he said, wow, I wish we could do something like that here. I said, maybe that will happen. When there's an exchange going on of cultures, seeing what other cultures do. But I that's just the way I believe. And when I went to a drug court conference and it was over 5,000 people attending, I saw there were other people that thought like me, other judges that thought like me. I wasn't alone. I was in good company. So the specialty courts have taken over in the court systems to really focus on problems and help resolve the problems, not just lock people up, not just lock them up.
So how's this propagating across the country? Do you see this? If it's a win-win situation, and if the numbers speak for themselves, shouldn't this be something adopted across the country?
Yeah, drug courts. When I was on the board of the NADCP, they had at the time, and I served for 4 years, over 2,000 drug courts, okay? And they were taking it to other countries. That's one of the things they did. So they started them in other countries. The Dominican Republic was there. The people from Mexico were there. I mean, they were going out and they were branching out. Canada was already part of it. And, in 2005, my drug court got selected as the second best drug court in the country. So the thing is that it's spread way out. When I started that prostitution track, I got notifications from the UK. They wanted us to send them a packet on our prostitution track because they wanted to emulate that. And when I talked to people in Canada, and I said I had probably been doing the program for about maybe 8 months, and I told them, they asked me, well, how is that going? And I said, well, I was comparing it in my brain to my regular drug court. I said, it's okay. I mean, about 50% ran. I had to get them back. My sheriff's department and I have a contract. They have to find them and they bring them back. I sit them down for a while. Then they get back in the program. And so 50%. And I said, yes. They said, we can't keep 1%. They said, you kept 50% in your program in prostitution? I said, yeah. They said, wow. And they started talking amongst themselves and bringing people over to meet me. I said, but that number, as I continued to do the program with that specialized track, that number wheedled down. Okay. Well, like one girl told me, I said, look, I'm going to put you in the program, but if you run, I promise you, I will find you. No matter where you go, I will find you and I will bring you back. And so they thought I had this power. And so, but I did have power here in Michigan. I would bring them back. So one was way up north, and she was up there, and she told one girl, she said, Judge Lloyd's gonna find me. She's gonna find me. And the girl said, are you kidding? She says, it's just misdemeanors. She said, they don't know what's gonna find. Yes, I found her. I found her and brought her back. She said, I said, were you surprised? And she said, nope. I knew you were gonna come looking for me. And sometimes some of the ladies, they would run and they would see there was nothing out there for them. And then they would stand on a corner waiting for the police, the sheriff to drive by. And he had their faces in the monitor. And then he'd pull up and they said, yeah, I know you're looking for me. My name is Ramona. Mm-hmm. And they said, get in the car. And so they get in the car. And I said, why'd you do it? They said, I knew you were going to send somebody out. So I just stood out there waiting. One girl said, there's nowhere I can run to. What do you mean run, Judge? I said, yes, there is. No, there's not. She said, all the places I would run to, you got everybody. I said, I don't have everybody. She said, yes, you do. She said, I'm finding people I thought were dead. She said, I thought they were dead 2 or 3 years ago. And she said, they were in your program. And I bumped into them in NA meetings. And I said, well, that's a good thing. They're not dead. And so she said, but even the dope houses, if they know that we're with you, they said, keep going, keep going. No, they didn't want the attention brought to the dope house with Judge Lloyd's people. And I said, well, that's a good thing. They're cooperating with me. Good. But the bottom line is that when we would go, I did workshops, national workshops, so that people saw that these worked and it just grew. It just grew across the country. They even have specialized prostitution courts now. So it's been growing. It's been growing and growing and growing. And it's well over probably 3,000 drug courts now. It's just, they really got it out there and publicized it more, then you know about it. But like people listening to me now, they're gonna know, I did a lot of PR when I was on the bench. The newspapers followed my girls for over a year and they followed them. They would show up at stuff. They wanted the real deal. They didn't want anything faked. They didn't want stage stuff. So they'd find out, what are those girls doing this Friday? What are those girls? And they show up. They show up at these different things. And the girls were doing what they're supposed to do because I'm screening 3 times a week. So I'm pretty much knowing what you're doing. And I had no problem with that. And then they did a two-day big spread on us in the Detroit Free Press that had never been done before about any court on anything, unless you're killing 25 people. You might get that headline then, but not because it's prostitution. But when they saw the real change in these girls, because they followed them for so long, they saw it was real. They saw it was so. Yeah, but it's those courts have multiplied and multiplied. Now trafficking is one of the courts that they have all over the United States to help women who are trafficked. So and they develop plans and programs. And same thing with the prostitution. Same thing with drug courts in general.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your book. Your Honor, Your Honor. When did you write that, and what is it about?
Well, it came out last August. That's right, we're in 2021. And the book is a memoir about me and my sister. And it talks about the trials and tribulations that we went through as from young girls. People looked at us and assumed we lived a charmed life, they probably didn't have it bad. And I say that because I had a defendant one time tell me, she says, well, Judge, you don't understand. You don't understand. It's hard out here. And you haven't maybe had these difficulties. And I just lost it. And I told her, don't you ever tell me what I don't understand. You have not walked in my shoes. You don't know what I have experienced. And the little girl looked at me and said, and I gave her an accounting of one thing when I was studying for the bar exam. And my sister and I had planned 2 months. We had to take off work. We saved up enough money for this little raggedy apartment we were in. And when we heard gunfire, we would hit the floor to make sure bullets don't zoom through windows. But that was the conditions that we were living under to study. And, we had devised a plan. We had grits and bacon 3 times a day for 2 months. And the only time we had fried chicken was my girlfriend came over every Friday and she would bring Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that was a feast. And, I look back now and I laugh, but back then we were very serious. We were very focused. Food was something you eat to live. Okay, so I didn't have steaks and all that fancy stuff. And and I wasn't dressing up in a lot of fancy things. We were focused. And when I told this girl this, she said, I didn't know. I said, I know you didn't. But the book tells you the trials and tribulations we went through started, when our mother had a subarachnoid hemorrhage. And it's like a bleeding stroke of the brain. And we were 5-year-old little girls. And she never came back to herself, never came back to herself. My father didn't tell us this until we were 18. We knew she had the subarachnoid hemorrhage, and she was a registered nurse, but she never went back to practice. And we didn't quite understand why she didn't go back. She would just say, no, my husband is the breadwinner and I'm not going back. She would tell her friends who were her nursing friends, but as I got older and I looked at, the situation when we were teenagers, and my father was like, he didn't understand why she didn't go back either. So he said, I need a little help here. I need a little help. He said, they want stuff, and he said, it'd be easy if you just kind of did a couple of days of nursing every week. He said, no, I'm not doing it. But she would take out her license to practice. She kept that up every year and she would show it to us. And she said, I can go and nurse anytime I want. And then tears would fall down her eyes. And we said, well, why are you crying? And she said, no reason. When I wrote this book, in retrospect, I thought about it when you're 30 years old and your whole life changes. And from that point on, the career that you loved and did for 10 years, you can no longer do. You can't put people's lives in your hands because that mechanism in your brain is not working like it was before. She was valedictorian high school class as well as her nursing class. Very smart lady.
Wow.
And now she has 2 little girls to take care of, and that's it. We're kind of her life, And she was a wonderful mother. She was very sweet, kind, and all our friends said, hey, we call her our moms too. They loved her. But when we got to be high school, we were getting ready to be the commencement speakers. And she said, well, I'll help you because I was a commencement speaker. And of course, she was listening to us. We were writing our speeches and doing all of this. But then all of a sudden, she started doing things that weren't quite right. She was looking at TV. We'd look at TV with her. That was our best buddy. Our mother was our best buddy. And so she said, you see Jesus right there on the screen? We said, what? We're looking at Gunsmoke. Gunsmoke doesn't have Jesus walking down the streets where the saloon is. And so we started giggling. We're teenagers. And we said, Mama, what you talking about? She said, see right there. I said, Mama, there is no Jesus in this picture. And so we looked at her. We said, then we stopped laughing. We said, do you really see Jesus? And then she must have said to herself, okay, I'm not supposed to say that. So she said, no. But she was so insistent before. And then she would, every other time she would see stuff. We didn't know that those were like hallucinations. We didn't know that. We didn't know that. And then she wouldn't go to sleep. Well, back in that, in those days, TV went off at night. Now you can watch it forever, but TV went off and you just sit up there and look at a blank screen. And that's what she was doing. And we would come in there and say, Mama, why aren't you in the bed? And she would look at us and she said, okay, I'm going to bed. Now, that was not her. That was not her. And the behavior became more and more bizarre. And finally, my father had to take her to the hospital. And when he took her to the hospital, he called us and said, I had to take your mother to the hospital. He said, I'm coming back. I want you, we joined him at the hospital. And we didn't understand why she was in a psychiatric unit. Why is she here? And we're looking around and the doctor said she had a nervous breakdown. We said, from what? And he said, this is usually depression. We said, what would she be depressed about? And he said, I don't know. The only one who knows that is your mother. And you may never discover that. Well, the thing is that my mother never, ever, ever said what she was ever depressed about. In fact, she would always say, I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed. And then I said, well, but Mama, he says that you're depressed. No, I'm not. Now, if they never want to tell you, then you never get to that source. But her personality changed. And we were getting ready to go to college. And her personality changed. She became very mean, totally different, very mean to my father, very mean to us, to the point where after the first year at college, Leona and I said, if we're going to finish college, we're going to have to move on campus because she's eventually going to take the car. She, as a child, you know what your children will not eat. They just won't eat. My mother used to sit us up there and say, you're going to sit here. And if you don't eat that, you'll sit here till it eats you. So we sat there and it got dark. And my father said, look, they're not going to eat that. And my father would take plates, throw the food away. He said, they don't want that. Well, now she's cooking those same things, okay? And we're not going to eat it. And we saw the writing on the wall. And my father, he's like in the middle. What does he do? If he tries to say something, she screams at him and she hollers. And she never done any of this. And we just cried. We said, when is our mother going to come back? But we ended up moving on campus in Detroit. We were living on campus in Detroit. And my mother had prepared us for college so much. She had said, when you graduate, she told me we were little girls sitting at an ice cream counter with her, and we watched the lady clean the floor. And she said, see that lady right there? That's going to be you when you graduate high school. We said, no, it's not. And she said, oh, yes, it is. She said, because if you don't go on to college, you won't have an education to do anything but what she's doing. She said, so take a good look at it because you're not going to sit in my house and not work. But that's the only job. I said, well, you have us doing that every summer. Every summer you have us doing hard labor when we get out of school. And she said, no. She said, well, take a good look. that left such an impression on us. There's nothing wrong with cleaning the floors if that's what you want to do. But if that's not what you want to do and you want more options open to you, then you travel that road that gives you the options. And education was the answer. And so I said, no, we're not. So my mother, indirectly using her psychology on us, she was brainwashing us right at that point. And she did a good job. She did a great job. She made you work so hard in the summer that you didn't play with nobody else out there all the way through grade school and high school. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. And so the book touches on all of this, you know, the lessons that we learned, commitments that we made, you know, based upon what she would say to us and what we would do, how if we said something, we're going to do it. We stuck to it. Didn't matter how hard it was, you know, didn't matter with her. She said, if you want a piano, and she said, you're going to practice this piano every day, or I'm going to take your allowance. And we said, we'll do it. And but she wasn't going to get you an expensive piano. They didn't have any money for that. So we said, she said, Leona said, well, what if we're only 10 now? What if we find a piano that doesn't cost much? Then can we have a piano? My mother looked at her. She said, and where are you going to find it? She said, in the want ads. And my mother just looked at her. So Leona and I would comb the want ads and we found a piano for $25. And we showed our mother. She said, this is a piece of junk. She said, it probably doesn't even work. And we said, well, how will we know unless we go look? Can we at least go look? And she looked at me and Leona and she told my father. My father said, well, we can go look at it. And my mother looked at him like, go look at this piano for 25. So off we went the next day. And this little old lady showed us this beat up piano. It was a beat up something. My mother said, I know you don't want that. We said, yes, we do. So my father paid the lady the money. She said, you're going to have to get it tuned. And they got it tuned. They got it to the house, got it in the basement, and got it tuned. And she said, if I don't hear those keys singing, no allowance for you. Every day you miss, I'm counting up the weeks you won't get paid. We never missed a day. And but what we didn't know is that we're going to take piano lessons, but we had to walk over a mile or so to get there. And she said, every week you're to go, rain, sleet, or snow. And it was a blizzard one time. And we said, they're saying on TV not to go, Mama. They said you can't even see in front of you. My mother said, here's 2 more scarves. She handed them to her. She said, you're going to need these. And we said, you're making us go? She said, oh, yeah. And when we got there, we were frozen like popsicles. And the lady looked at us and she said, I didn't think nobody else came. She said, and we learned what commitment was. We learned that regardless of the obstacles, you get past the obstacles. You've made a decision of what you wanted to do. And we did it. She said, you're one of the few students I have that finished the whole John Tompkins course. She said, the 2 of you, there are no more books. And that was right at the time we turned 15, 10 to 15, we had finished those books. And now we were on to the Motown sound. So, and the book tells you about that. But, and again, all of the different things that we started going through, you know, from one issue to the next issue to I see the kids marching, Black Lives Matter. I know how it feels to be up against, you know, looking right in the eyes of an officer as they stand up there with bayonets. We did it at Wayne State, and talking to them, trying to make them understand. And the officer looked at me and said, ma'am, I cannot speak. I cannot talk to you. I said, good, I'll talk for both of us. And I continued right on talking, but we got what we asked for. And it was just that we wanted a meeting with the administration. They fired this Black lady, and the Black lady hadn't done anything wrong. She knew nobody else to go to get help. And the people that worked in the kitchen said, go to the Black Student Union. Those are the only people we know that can help you. And we did. And she got her job back. And the guy who fired her, he got fired. So I know what it means to protest. We did it when we were in the law school against them getting rid of minority programs quietly. You're going to try to quietly do this? No, we're not going to let you do that. No. We want to be part of the process. We want to have a voice. And so that meant getting up and speaking. So I know what that's about. When I became a teacher, one of the interview questions were, if there's a protest in front of the school and you're coming in and other kids want to come in, but they're scared, what would you do? Now you got to remember now, I've been in one protest, right? So I said, I would explain to them they have a right to protest, more power to them. But we have a right to go through. Let us through, keep marching. And I said, let the students that want to go through. I would make sure they go through, and then I would follow. And they said, what book did you read to get the right answers? I said, none. I said, none. It's just, that's my belief. They have the right to protest, but we also have a right to go in. And where whatever way it shakes out, it shakes out. But the bottom line, you can't stop the student. So I understand. I understand what they're arguing about. I've been followed through stores. I've been, targeted as like I'm gonna steal something. Okay. And I'm walking through and I'm a lawyer. What am I gonna steal? I'm gonna steal. But I know what it meant and how that made me feel. And my sister, oh, she went off. My sister went off. She got to the cash register. My mother wanted to shop in that store. And my sister said, I'm not buying anything from a store that does not respect my dollar. She says, no, they don't respect me, then they don't respect my money. So the lady who was listening to her started to try to explain, because Leona was fussing about the man following us all the way through the store as we're getting the items from my mother. And Leona just didn't like being treated as though she's some kind of criminal. And so she looked at the lady, she said, was I talking to you? She said, unless I'm talking to you, don't talk to me. Bring up my mother's stuff. She said, don't talk to me. My sister was angry. And, this was one item of power she had, which was not to converse with someone who's trying to give a rationale why this man followed us through the store. And when she brought up my sister's stuff, my sister said, now I don't want it. And the lady looked at my sister. Bottom line is that we understand what it means to be treated like you don't matter, that you don't matter, that you're going to be treated differently. And so I understand, and it's getting a little bit to the point. Well, it's always been serious, but when I heard a mother say, she was sitting there with her son, he's in college, first year student.
Mm-hmm.
He's sitting there with his book bag and he's talking to her, and they're eating lunch. And then it's time for him to go get to his classes. And she said, okay, they left the restaurant. And then about a few feet down out of the store, out of the restaurant, he remembers, left his book bag, his expensive book bag. And so he says, I got to go get my book bag. So he's running to go get it, as anybody would, And she said, she looked at him and she said, oh, if he runs, they're going to think he's a fugitive. They're going to think he's a good thing. She said, stop running, stop running, stop running. And I looked, and I the sadness in my heart when I heard that. Now I'm a sitting judge listening to this, okay? I have had officers come in there and they have called people out of their names, and these people have pled guilty on a ticket, but they said, Judge, I'm pleading guilty for disorderly conduct because we were all out there. It was a picnic. We were very loud and we were angry at each other. And the officers came and separated us, men on this side, women. But she said, but he didn't have to call me a black bitch. And I looked at him and I said, did you do that? And he looked at me and he turned red in the face. And he said, I probably did. I said, probably? And he said, well, you must understand, we have to have the same toughness that they do on the streets. And so, we have, in other words, of this phony facade that they have. And I said, but what did she do in particular to be called that? And he said, nothing. I was being overzealous. And he said, may I apologize to her? I said, I think that's an order. And so he went over to her. He said, ma'am, I'm very sorry. Please accept my apology. And she said, yes. And then they shook hands in the courtroom. And then he went back. And I told him, I said, you are an extension of me out there. Okay? You are an extension of me, the law. I said, in the way you represent yourself, I said, reflects on this court. I said, handle yourself in a manner you can still get the job done without doing that. never have to degrade anybody, because other people will fight if you do that. You do that, they will fight. And she just didn't fight, but she said, that's all I wanted, Judge. That's all I wanted. I'm not going to sit up here and lie that I wasn't arguing with other people and loud. I was. I will take my responsibility, but he didn't have to disrespect me. And now I'm satisfied. So I've had that. I've had how officers become part of the problem. And I've addressed it. And I've dismissed cases because of that. Because if you sit up there and you become the problem, not the kid that you're trying to stop, and then everybody circles you off because they see all these cop cars that you call, and the kid hasn't done anything except ask you, why are you telling me to get out the car? And I'm a passenger. He said, if you say one more thing, I'm going to arrest you. He said, for what? That's it. Get out. Come on, fat boy. And he said, yeah, there you go, disrespecting me again. And then he tries to slam the man on the ground, but he can't because the guy's real big. And then he calls all these cars. Well, it's a neighborhood. All these people are opening their doors. Like, what is he doing to these two kids? You know, and then why are all these cop cars here? What did they do? He didn't do anything. And I dismissed it. Well, and the lawyer said, yeah, well, we're suing the city. You know, so the bottom line is that I understand when I see these young people out here marching, I understand what they're doing. Now, these people that loot the stores and stuff, I don't go along with none of that. None of that. And people using incidents to incite stuff and disrupt the peaceful protesters. I don't go along with that. Okay. Because the peaceful protesters are trying to make a point. And the police that are listening, the police that are trying to find common ground with them, I respect that. And I see that happening in several of the cities here in Michigan. Southfield was one. I saw one officer take a knee with them, and the whole crowd just calmed down immediately. The communication has to go on. So, you know, when you read this book, you see how I'm talking about the law. What happens in front of me? What do I say in terms of different situations? Why did I take the path I did to help correct situations? When I did the prostitution program, one white officer, and the girls had nicknamed him Pinky because he was so pink all the time. And so he said, he told me when they got ready to transfer him, he had been with me for 2 years. He said, you know, I can tell you this, I didn't want to transfer. He said, when I first came to this program, I didn't want to be here. He said, you're going to try, these girls, I've seen these girls in the streets, he said, 5-10 years. And you're going to sit up here and you're going to try to change them. He said, I looked at you. He said, but when I saw what you did and how they changed in 2 years and what they were doing, he said, you made me a believer. You actually made me a believer. I would never have guessed that this would happen. And he said, and then when they got ready to move me, I didn't want to move. He said, I didn't want to be changed and transferred. He said, I just wanted you to know, I started out not believing in this program at all. He said, but I do now, and I respect you. So, you know, when you look at, because I had a motto, God doesn't make junk. He just doesn't. Okay, there are a lot of people who are lost. They have to find their way. Okay, but if you give them the tools that they need, and that's what the book talks about. It talks about even I had transgender folks in there, and I had to fight to get a different place for them because they were being attacked in the other place. You can't put this transgender woman over here in this place with these men. They thought she was the prettiest thing they'd ever seen. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, did my phone light up? Did it light up? Oh, yes, it lit up. Judge, you got to get her out of here. You got to get her out of here. I said, well, where am I going to put her? Put her with the women. I said, oh. She got there one day. Women wanted to fight her. Women wanted to fight her because she was real cute. Women wanted to fight her. They called me up. You got to take her out of here. They're going to kill her. They're going to kill her. I said, where do I go? So I fought to have something. I had good working relationships with a lot of the partnerships out in the city, and so they created a program for them so they could get clean. They could get, you know, they're in there for drug addiction. I'm not there to change who they are. I'm not there to change what sex they want to be. That's them and their decision. I'm there to get you clean like I got everybody else clean and to help you get into a path. One young man came back when he knew I was retiring. And of course, he had made a total transformation. I didn't recognize me sitting in the back of the courtroom. And at the very end, he said, tell the judge I want to speak to her, but tell her this is my name. So he gave me the real name, his first name. And I said, I know that name. And then when I told him to come up, when that big smile flashed, I said, I will never, ever forget that smile, ever. And he said, I wanted you to know I heard you were retired. So I had to come and let you know what I'm doing. He said, I will be graduating next semester. He said, I already have a job counseling. And he's counseling other addicted transgender people so that he can help them find a way. He was extremely bright, straight A student in college. I said, I had tethers on him. He couldn't go in neighborhoods. I had clamped down on him. But he developed into a great person when he left and graduated my program. I knew he had what he needed. The question is, when you leave, you can either go back to your life, whatever that was, okay, any of them, or you can pick the life you now have. They picked the life that they had. It talks about that. It talks about all of that in terms of different choices that people have. And it really is meant to inspire people, no matter what walk of life that they're in, that I want them to make a plan for their life. A plan, a successful plan. I want them to dream bigger than they've ever dreamed before. And I want them to be so big that they think they can't do it. This is impossible. Just like they told me. And
where do they find the book?
It's on Amazon, Amazon.com. And if they go to see Judge Lloyd's book.
Awesome.
It's this is the way the cover looks. It's got two heads on there. So, but I've had people tell me that I had a third cousin I've never met. She met me through Facebook, and she's a young girl. And she said, after I read your book, she said, I decided I'm going back to college. Awesome. And I'm gonna start, And so when I heard that, and then a couple of other folks said, you made me feel like I could do anything. And I said, that's what it's supposed to do, because you have greatness inside of you that you don't even know yet. I watched people transform every week in front of my eyes. I call it divine intervention. I don't have that power, but I watched people transform. And when you see it, and I did this for 14 years, this part of being a judge, and you see people come in. One time a camera crew came in and they were filming me for this documentary on the program. So they heard me say to different girls, I said, oh, you look nice today. And so when we took a break and they came up there and they said, well, Judge, we noticed that you're telling the girls they look nice. I mean, they look nice. And he said, but are you just doing this to placate them, and make them feel good? I said, I took out a mug shot book, and they have mug shots in them. And I said, remember the girl who had the polka dot blouse on? And they said, mm-hmm. I said, I flipped the page. I said, this is her when she entered my program. And they said, I said, yeah, that's her. Don't look like her, does it? And they said, no. I said, I turned a couple more pages. I said, remember the girl that got up here and had the navy blue jacket on with the red shirt? And they said, I said, that's her. And they said, oh my God. I said, when I say you look nice, I am not trying to be nice to you.
Right.
I said, I'm being honest. Honest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Judge Lloyd. This has been a pleasure talking to you, learning about your book, learning about your career, your life. Very inspiring. And I'm sure, a lot of people would be intrigued to go check out the book and to keep in touch. So thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for relating your life and the different episodes that you did.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.